Hello everyone and welcome into another round of the Nations Cup. So this is round 4 of the exhibition series and this race had 438 points. So this was quite high and my qualifying lap was only 2/10 off the lead, which was okay. But yeah, just as soon as I finished my first lap it was only for P10. Just imagine, P10 to P1, it's 2/10. And all of a sudden, I was able to get into the final lap with only 1 second to go, and I just couldn't improve. I mean, I was really pushing it, but the tires were slightly off, and in the end, it was, well, it wasn't that great. It was okay, but, I mean, as you probably noticed, I made a couple of mistakes, and it was only good enough for P11 on the grid. So I was just 2/10 off, and from P1 to P10, 2/10. It was absolutely insane. So I chose the McLaren, which wasn't exactly the best car on the grid when it comes to these standing starts. It's quite good on tires, but the standing starts are not exactly the best. You can see that Ferrari is just flying past me, and there is really nothing much that I could have done there. So first turn, usually there is a lot of carnage. I'm trying to stay on the outside, try to avoid all of that mess, and I was able to get quite clean through the first corner, well, to the Senna SS. So here I can see that Antonio slightly went off. I don't know what happened there, but it was probably cold tires over the curbs. And yeah, that's pretty much about it. So in front of me, we have a half a second penalty, and then just a little dive bump got me into my back end. And at this point, I thought, you know what, it's game over. But luckily, I didn't have any damage on the car. I don't know how that happened, but I was somehow able to avoid damage, and damage in this race was set to heavy, which means that in order to repair the car, you need to pit. And yeah, the pitting window was just about 10 to 15 laps away, so it wasn't there, and I would be losing just about half a second to maybe even a second per lap. So the game would be pretty much, well, the race would pretty much be game over if I had any kind of damage on the car. So Jos got a half a second penalty, and I was actually able to catch these guys up in front. So I'm not the last guy anymore, or I wasn't last guy, I was like in P15, but it's still like really a long way to the front of the field. So here we got P15, and all of a sudden I see that Mazda RX is really struggling with that rear grip, which it usually is. Jos Srbin has half a second penalty, which meant that he was about to lose all of his free places. So it was, well, the deficit is quite high on this one if you get a penalty. And then later I realized that the Italian actually had damage, and you can see how much he losing on the straight. So that's, yeah, it's pretty much game over. You can somehow get a couple of laps in, but you need to pit in order to repair the car, otherwise you'll just be losing too much time. So I was into P13, and the race all of a sudden it started to look a lot better. Only 8 seconds from the lead, which is not bad. I mean, usually on this track the differences between, well, the pole sitter, as you previously saw, and for example someone who is in P10 is just about 2/10 per lap, sometimes maybe a little bit more, but it's not much. It's really not much. But then again, P13, I'm just trying to follow the Italian in front of me, just trying to not make a mistake, not to pick up a penalty, or not even to mention not to get damage, which would pretty much destroy my race. But I thought about it, and I said to myself, you know what, I'm gonna push it, I'm gonna give it a shot, and whatever happens in the end, I'm gonna be happy with it. Even if I get a couple of places, I'm gonna be happy with it, and I'm just trying to save this race as much as possible. So the Italian made a little mistake on the way out of that last corner onto the straight, and I was able to pick up that slipstream. I had more than enough fuel. I was checking the fuel, and I decided to rev up this car into the first turn. I needed a radar. I'm just diving down the inside, which wasn't exactly the dive. He left the doors open, and I'm somehow squeezing myself into P12. So all of a sudden it's looking better. It's not the best, but it's already looking a lot better than, well, first turn of the first lap. Well, actually it was the second turn. So just trying to defend a little bit, nothing too much. I saw that he wasn't exactly going for it, so I didn't really want to defend that hard. I just, you know, I just went with my normal line, kind of, yeah, I thought there was no intention to dive bomb me there because I was a little bit quicker than him, and that's exactly what happened in there. And all of a sudden, I'm starting to pick up the pace, I'm starting to catch all of the other guys in front of me, and I was actually at this point a little bit faster than the leader. In the next lap, I lost a bit of time, but then we had a couple of penalties up in front, so the Polish, the Sejek, got a half a second penalty, and also the Frenchman, who was actually pretty quick in this one, and he got, I think he got a second penalty or half a second penalty, not quite sure what kind of was it, but he was definitely losing a lot of time on the straight. And then I was actually fighting for P10, so from perspective of the first lap, this is actually looking much better. And then I decided to, well, give it a little look down the inside of turn 1, and he left the doors open. He thought, oh, okay, you're a little bit quicker. I don't want to fight too much. I don't want to close the doors, eventually lose too much time fighting. And well, that's exactly what happened. I sent it down to inside and I was into P10. But it wasn't over yet. He was really quick and he wasn't about to let this go just like that. He was, well, he was trying to fight it out a little bit, but nothing too much. So I just tried to cover down the inside of this turn, and it proved out to be a good strategy because there is nothing much you can do if you close the doors to the inside of this turn. And then eventually we got into this kind of tricky technical section of the track, which, well, it's usually better for McLaren because you can put the power down, but I made a little mistake here. I almost kind of lost it completely, and luckily I was able to save the car at this point, and I was able to kind of recover and get my car back into the game. So here we got into P11, and then I thought, you know what, maybe it's not worth fighting that much, but either way, you know what, I think I got a little bit more pace than him. I think at this point I was a little bit quicker. Maybe it was the slipstream, but you know, I was always very quick and always very close to him at this point of the track. And I tried to send it out the outside, which is not usually the best corner to do it, because it's simply, I mean, if the guy is really quick like he was, there is no way that you're gonna send it down the inside. Okay, if maybe I had better tires, yes, but we kind of had equal tires, so it wasn't exactly possible. So I decided to pit in lap 10, which means that my stint is going to be a little bit longer than I intended to do. So I think I wanted to do like a 12-13 split, but in this case I just wanted to avoid traffic and I wanted to avoid like all of the troubles up there, so I decided to pit a little bit early, maybe do an undercut. But then Jos did, well, he actually pitted one lap earlier than me and he was able to undercut me at this point. But I had slightly better tires, which means that I can push a little bit more, but also this McLaren has amazingly good tire wear. I just wasn't sure how, but it had much better tire wear than all of the other cars around. So it was pretty OP in the race. In the qualifying and the start, it's not exactly the best car, but in the race it was probably the best car to choose from. So I know the field was really spread out, but I think the McLaren had definitely the best tire wear. So I got a better run than Jos out of the last turn, and I was able to send it out the inside of first turn. He wasn't really going defensive. I think he knew. He just wanted to avoid any kind of trouble, avoid losing time, and eventually stick with his own strategy. And I think he knew. I mean, he's a really quick driver. He knew that the McLaren can do 16 laps on one set of mediums, and even when you're lighter, it just gets easier. So he didn't want to defend too much, but he wasn't really about to let it go that easily. So we were just trying to kind of manage the time loss, but also kind of fight it out, see, you know, who can get on the top of this, and eventually get that P12. But he wasn't really that aggressive in that turn. He just wasn't going to send it in any of these turns, and he was really respectful. I do appreciate that, so thank you very much for that. And I was able to push at this point, and I was able to maybe get a little bit more speed out of some of the turns. So it was, at this point, it was actually looking much better than what I expected out of that first turn, first corner actually. So it was much better than the first lap, so I decided to carry on, decided to, well, push it at this point, and I don't think I maybe should have been pushing that much, but I think it was okay in the end. So all of the other guys pitted at this point. It was lap 12, but just a couple of laps later, I was able to get back into P10, which means that all of the other guys pitted, but they also had better tires, which means that, once again, I will most likely have to defend at the later stages of this race. But I thought, you know what, this car has really good tire and maybe that's not going to happen. And exactly, that didn't happen. So the McLaren had so much better tire wear that I even started to catch up the other guys up in front, and I was only 10 seconds from the lead. So at this point, 21 laps. It's actually 22 laps now. I was kind of able to catch these guys and even maybe go for that P8 or P9. So Albator made, well, it's quite a usual mistake here, but I was promoted into P9. So this was a mistake. Riding the curb a little bit too heavy with that Ferrari, and this is exactly what happens if you slide your way on that curb, or if you put too much power on the outside of the curb out there. It's quite tricky corner, and it's usually the one where you can make a mistake and easily spin out. So now at this point I was just behind Wind and I was catching him. So it was quite interesting at this point, because I never thought I was gonna be doing this. And I even got one more place because Fento got disconnected. I'm not exactly sure what happened, but I think his internet connection just dropped and he disconnected from the race. So now I'm catching Wind, and all of a sudden we're like 3 laps away from the finish line, and then I see this. Wind riding the curb, sliding the car way too much, and I thought to myself, what happened there? I mean, he's not the type of guy that would make something like this. This was just pretty much a rookie mistake in here. And then later, he jumped into the chat and said his TV turned off and he couldn't see what he was doing, which kind of justified all of this. And as I was crossing the finish line here, I thought to myself, I almost quitted the race. I was P15, and I think this pretty much gives you an idea to, well, never give up, because you never really know what can happen, and you never really know what can go on in the race, especially when the race is so long. So once again, guys, please let me know what do you think about this race down in the comments, and let me know if you like this one. So once again, thank you very much for watching, and until the next time, bye.